You know, for the longest time, I was one of those people that said, like, you know, I don't care about graphics at all. Like, if the game is fun, then who cares about the graphics? And I still somewhat stand by that. Like, if a game is fun, then, like, whatever to the graphics, I guess. Like, my freaking favorite game of all time is Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky. That's a Nintendo DS game that's 2D and looks like it could have existed on, like, the SNES. It's one of those kinds of Nintendo DS games where it's 2D pixelated, as if it could have been on, like, the SNES. So, like, my favorite game of all time is a very pixelated game. So, at the end of the day, I feel like if a game is, like, a really good game, then whatever to the graphics. But over time, I felt like, you know, graphics aren't going to be the thing that makes a good or bad game. But it will absolutely add to the charm of the world and how, like, immersed you feel and how much you just go, like, wow, that's beautiful, you know? Like, I started really feeling that when I was playing games like Breath of the Wild, like Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Playing games like that where it's like, whoa, I could just stare and admire these worlds. They are absolutely gorgeous. Like, I feel like the charm a game has a lot to do with, like, the world that's built and the graphics of that world, the way that they're handled. Because that has to do with, like, you know, how much it feels like you want to be in this world. Like, when I play something like Breath of the Wild, or if I play something like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I'm like, whoa, I want to be in this world, you know, with it just being so charming. And now something like this, looking at things like crazy reflections and looking around how realistic this looks, I'm just like in awe and whatnot. Yeah, art style can be a big thing as well. Like, a well-executed art style can be a thing that absolutely makes or breaks an experience. Like with Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX, rather than just taking, like, the art style of, like, the last Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game of Super Mystery Dungeon, they were like, you know what, let's go for a brand new art style of making this whole world look like it's a drawing, like a pop-up book and whatnot. Make, like, all the backgrounds look like they're, like, drawn up with, like, stencil sketches with, like, colored pencils and stuff like that, and the characters kind of exist on top of them rather than, you know, existing in the world. They kind of exist on top of these sketches is what that art style went for. And I know a lot of people really didn't like that. I loved it. I freaking loved the art style of Rescue Team DX. They could have absolutely just gone with what, you know, Super had left off with, but they decided to go for this kind of look where it's like the whole world looks like, the whole background of all the world and, like, all the facilities and everything looks like it was a pencil drawing and whatnot, and colored in with colored pencils, and the characters kind of exist on top of this as if it's a pop-up book, rather than, like, you look at something like this and it's like, okay, Aiden exists in this world, whereas in Rescue Team DX, with the way the backgrounds were drawn and the way the characters were drawn, it looked like the characters existed, like, on top of the world rather than as a part of it. Like, the backgrounds were their own separate drawings, and then the characters were, like, a different type of drawing on top of that. And it felt out of place for some people, but I loved it. I thought it was a really cool way to make the world look and feel like you're opening a cool pop-up book of a story. I really like the art style of Rescue Team DX. So, like, the art style that you take for your game and, like, the extent to which you handle the graphics can absolutely make or break an experience. Like, freaking, look at the freaking Pokemon Sword and Shield with its, you know, just get the job done kind of world a lot of the time, and it's like, oh, like, I still had a lot of fun with Sword and Shield. Like, I mentioned it in my Pokemon video essay, I had a lot of fun with Sword and Shield at the end of the day, but the world wasn't very charming. Like, if you go play something like Xenoblade Chronicles 1 or 2 on the Switch, or freaking Breath of the Wild, and look at those worlds, it's like, oh my goodness, I want to be a part of this world, this is beautiful. Or worlds that have unique art styles, like Breath of the Wild, or like Rescue Team DX, or I guess like Xenoblade as well, also goes hand in hand with that. It's like, whoa, this is a really cool depiction of a world. And then there's just games like Watch Dogs here, where they go with, like, a realistic art style, where it's like, try to make it look real and whatnot. Of course, there is also, like, an aspect of fiction in this, because, you know, in Watch Dogs Legion here, they put it in, like, a futuristic kind of setting. London's sometime in the future, so they went with, like, more of a neon look and whatnot. More kind of bright lights and stuff and drones all over the place that do contribute to, like, the world, the art style, and the feel. And being able to see it in full force like this, it's like, whoa, that's really freaking cool, you know? Like, I'm enamored. Like, Watch Dogs Legion has a lot of problems. I've mentioned it many times before. But looking at the world that can be handled, like, on hardware that can handle it well, I'm enamored. I'm quite frankly in love. It would be cool if the game was good too. Watch Dogs Legion, it's good in some ways, unless you're talking about Pokemon Sword and Shield. That or Watch Dogs Legion. This game is good in some ways. Like, I really love this DLC. Like, this DLC was handled really well, but the main game was a mixed bag. But I've rambled a lot of times about how the main game is a mixed bag, so let's not do it right now. At some point, I might do, like, a dedicated, like, podcast thingamabob about how this game is a mixed bag and had a lot of potential but missed its mark in a lot of ways. But yeah, and more is at least you'll get the Dark Souls trilogy for handheld on good old Steam Deck. Remember when you first played the Demon Souls remake, just explore and took in the world? It was beautiful, and having the rain stop hitting you when that one boss flew over you, it was gorgeous. Like, that kind of attention to detail is the kind of thing that just makes you, like, enamored. Like I was saying before, I used to be the kind of person that was like, graphics don't matter at all. Nowadays, I'm like, okay, graphics aren't going to dictate whether it's, like, a good or bad game, but they will dictate the feel that you have when being in that game world. And, you know, how you feel is going to be, like, the end goal of player experience after all. Like, in game design, you have your MDA framework, mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics. Mechanics are your game mechanics, your rules. Like, these are freaking mechanics, for example. Dynamics is what actually happens in the game. Like, dynamics for me could be, I run down this street, I disable this drone, I freaking Falcon punch it, I miss, and then I keep running. And then aesthetics is how it makes you feel. Like, the dynamics that happened in your game. Like, whatever happened in your play experience, how did it make the player feel? Like, maybe I was running down the street and I was, like, glad to explore, and then I tried to Falcon punch that drone and I missed it and I felt disappointed or something like that. So, mechanics are what's most to the developer side. Aesthetics is what's most towards the player side. And the way your game looks will absolutely impact the aesthetics, how your game feels. Like, does this feel like a world that you want to explore? Does this feel like a charming place that you want to spend time in and, like, enamors you? So, in the past, I used to be like, graphics mean nothing. It's all the other aspects that matter. But nowadays, after my game design classes and after experiencing, like, a lot of very beautiful game worlds, I now, you know, realize essentially the importance of graphics in games, because they affect how you feel, they affect the aesthetics and the final player experience. So for that reason, graphics in games absolutely are important. Again, they aren't going to dictate, like, its graphics are good, so that's a good game. Its graphics are bad, so that's a bad game. It's absolutely not going to dictate that. But it does absolutely have an impact on the player experiences, and for that reason, graphics are important. So it sucks when something freaking has awful graphics, like the... Oh, did this ambulance run over my package? It did. Like we've seen in the, it literally did. Like we've seen in, like, the trailers for Pokemon Legends Arceus so far, that game looking like it's from the freaking GameCube. Like, I'm gonna play that and just feel like it's gross. Or playing freaking Skyward Sword HD on this channel so far, with just the number of pixels upgraded and, like, you know, nothing else really. All the textures being the exact same. Apparently Link got a few more polygons, but all the textures are the exact same. So, like, when I'm playing something like Skyward Sword HD and I can look at the ground and literally see the lines where the textures don't line up, or look at freaking rocks that look like they're from the Nintendo 64, where I never would have noticed how gross they looked on the 480p freaking display of the Wii version, because there was enough blur that I didn't notice how bad the textures were. But in full HD, I'm gonna notice how bad the textures are, and it's like, ah! Something like that can absolutely ruin an experience for me. It has semi-ruined my experience in Skyward Sword HD, because it looks like garbage! Skyward Sword HD looks like garbage. I'm gonna freaking say it. So, again, graphics aren't going to dictate this is a good game, this is a bad game. Like, Skyward Sword HD on the Switch is still Skyward Sword, and Skyward Sword is a great game in my opinion. So Skyward Sword HD, for that reason, is still going to be a great game in that right, because it's still Skyward Sword. But it does absolutely impact your player experience, the experience that they're taking away from it, which the goal of making a game should always be to create the optimal player experience. And with cases like Skyward Sword HD, we really don't seem to see Nintendo caring about the final player experience like game developers are supposed to aim for. The aiming for optimal aesthetics, the final player experience and feelings that you want your players to have. It sucks that that's something that Nintendo doesn't care about anymore, seemingly, with stuff like that. But yeah, Gazmet looks like garbage. Skyward Sword, no! Groos's demon figures, yo, freaking Groos's glove and, like, arm looks like it's from the Nintendo 64. And these are, like, criticisms I never would have had in the original, because the original was a 480p display. It was blurred enough that I didn't notice these minor details. But in HD, these details are, like, right in your face. And it's like, oh, it's so gross! So, like, people could judge me being like, oh, how are you saying this game looks gross when it's just like, you know, more pixels than the original? Like, the graphics were the exact same in the original, just like more pixelated, like less pixels and whatnot. So how are you complaining when the models and the textures and all that was exactly the same in the original? The reason is because it was blurred enough in the original with the 480p display that you're not going to notice these things, and it looks good. Like, it will have aged well and still look good in the original, but when you don't change any of that and just scale up the number of pixels, all of a sudden the things that are problems are way more blatant. And it's like, oh, so that's the way that was. Like, I had no idea some of the models and textures were so bad until I played Skyward Sword HD, because you'd never notice it in the original. Because it's a 480p display, you know? Anyway, moving on to other thingamabobs here. Let's move on to Claire's missions, how about? Hacks gun jam. That could be handy. Jams an enemy's gun, preventing them from firing until jam is cleared. Yeah, so let's go do the hypocritical oath and whatnot. Angel's request. Continue helping it. Okay, so that one's just like, there's 2 missions and then you can do that. Oh, wait, we also got this. So, like, do I want to try that? We never even tried out the shotgun. Whatever. Guess we never get to try the shotgun. Whatever. Let's go talk to Claire. Let's go talk to Claire over here is what we do. But yeah. More assistive technique, but upscaling doesn't make things automatically better. Yeah. If only Nintendo would realize that before pumping out Skyward Sword HD. If only. My oh my. But yeah, the whole kind of main thingamabob of that whole ramble I gave is, yeah, graphics still aren't going to be like the end all be all for games, but they are absolutely important because they impact your player experience. This is my stop. Gosh darn, I wanted to go flying out while I was still moving. Why do I have my gun out? Can I put that away? Thanks. And yeah, seeing something like really freaking flushed out with like hardware that can handle it, as we're seeing now with this card, is like, whoa, that's cool, you know?
Looking for me?
Yeah, I'm just admiring the environment for a hot second because I've never had, you know, this is the, like I mentioned before, I've never had like a freaking PlayStation console past the PS2 or an Xbox console past the 360. So like, this is my first time ever using technology this good to like build up a world. So forgive me if I'm a little bit enamored and in awe of technology and whatnot. But yeah, this session has been graphics and why they matter. There's your title. Yeah, that's essentially that. Maybe that should be a future video essay.
You must be Claire.
Like,
Tony said you could use some help with a story.
Story?
What are you, a journalist?
Journalist, podcaster, take your pick. I've got a nose for bullshit.
That's been me with my recent video essays. I've got a nose for bullshit.
Operating off of more than
Nintendo's
just your
classic game
nose on this.
conundrum, how Pokemon lost its magic.
And
Three
fact
Houses
is,
loses
this
meaning.
deal involves something Rempart calls their premium protection plan.
Oh, sounds like
They're
something
public
Nintendo would
this
design.
service, so I want to know what it is.
All right. Got any ideas on where to start?
Of course. One of Rempart's reps will be visiting Karkani today to finalize the
Also,
deal.
when
All
it comes
you have
to
do
companies
is
not
download
having
their
the best
files.
stance when it comes to like monetizing things, we've been talking a whole lot about Nintendo's lazy, you know, ways to make a quick buck. But even the game that we're playing right now, Watch Dogs Legion, Ubisoft aren't exactly, you know, angels by any means. I don't want it to make it seem like this whole time that I'm rambling is like freaking screw Nintendo, praise Ubisoft, the makers of the game that I'm currently playing. That's not at all what I'm trying to imply by any means. Like, I've done a whole lot of shitting on Watch Dogs Legion. Heck, even earlier this session when I gave like my kind of review. Let's not get started on EA. Yeah, there's the whole situation with EA and whatnot. We all know what they did. Yep. Take me off of that gross store screen and whatnot. But yeah, like the past several video essays have been me like doing like deep criticisms on things. Like there was how Pokemon lost its magic, criticizing the modern business stances of the Pokemon series. There was freaking the Three Houses video essay that was more so from a I love this, but here's some things I have to say about it kind of standpoint when it came to Three Houses. there was my criticism essay on Dead by Daylight and the ways that look how cool this is, and what holds that back and whatnot. And then the latest video essay was Nintendo's classic game conundrum, talking about, you know, Nintendo's stance on their classic games. Like, freaking all my latest video essays have been me shitting on things. So I want for some future video essays to just like tackle some broad like game industry kind of stuff to have a discussion and in-depth analysis about. And my plan was, my next video essay was probably going to be, can historical video games replace textbooks? Like, essentially, how much can we, like, that would probably be like my title, but what it would probably really truly be is like, how much can we trust the accuracy of historical video games, essentially?
Claire, I'm here.
Like,
Anything I should know about this place?
can it be interpreted from an academic standpoint? But that doesn't sound as good as a YouTube title. But it was essentially one of the main topics that was covered in my use of history in video games class. So it's something that I already have an essay written on. So I'm going to be rereading this essay that I already have written on the subject over and over again. Like, I'm obviously not going to just like copy paste it, because the original had like, you have to meet this checklist of things you have to say for the sake of this class. There's so many references you have to use to like wacky other stuff that I'm not going to want to use in this video. So I'll be doing like a script from the ground up for that. But I will be referring to like my essay that I wrote for this class a decent bit. So that'll be interesting. Can't say anything on that as for fiction games, but it is a good question. Yeah, and something that I never considered until this class that I took, where, that's so cool, look how cool that is. Something that I never considered until I took that class, and now I feel like I have a good enough understanding on the subject that I can write a second essay on it, this one in video format, as opposed to like my writing first one that I've already written on the subject for my university. So that was planned to be like the next video essay. I haven't even started writing the script yet. I have started like rereading my old essay and stuff though. But now this whole discussion, this stream, has got me thinking about like the next kind of subject for another video essay, because I've been freaking conflicted about what to do for like future video essay subjects. I only came up with the idea of like how can we judge the historical accuracy of historical video games, when I was like looking through my old documents trying to get ideas of like, was there any stuff that I planned to make a video essay that I never got the chance to? And I saw that essay and I was like, oh, I can do that. I'd actually really like to do an essay on that. So that's where the idea for that came from, was literally me brainstorming through that way like a week ago. But now rambling during this session has made me think about another video essay subject that is worth talking about as we've been rambling on here. Why graphics matter in video games. Maybe that should be the next video essay, and then the historical accuracy one after that, because the historical accuracy one is going to be it's going to be a long one, talking about how video games make arguments, why making arguments is important, how history is told in the first place, and how video games do that. Like, there's a lot of things that I need to establish and discuss in that video before I can answer the question of the video, essentially. I can't just answer the question from the beginning. I need to go through a lot of stuff, so that's going to be a very, very long one.
Top of my to-do list.
But why graphics matter in video games could be a bit of a shorter one. Like, I would have to discuss things like MDA framework, and, you know, how a player experience is derived and why that matters and whatnot. But it could be shorter than the freaking use of history in video games one, so maybe I'll do that one next. I don't know. I'll decide on one of those to maybe do next, because those are both topics that are absolutely worth talking about, you know? But yeah. Wonder if that's a necessary conversation to be had. Graphics are already held in very high regard, at least in the wider game community. I feel like most of the stuff that I cover is usually centered around Nintendo kind of stuff. And I feel like a lot of Nintendo fans, including me for a long time, are of the mindset where it's just like, graphics really don't matter at all. Just make the game fun, you know? And I feel like there's a lot of people that are, look how cool this is, that are like, freaking, I like better graphics more, but might actually like a direct analytical reason of why. Like MDA framework, for example. The aesthetics and player experience and whatnot, like an actual game design standpoint kind of reason, you know? How about I do this?
Power down.
Power down. Yeah, it really depends on the community. And I really never considered, you know, graphics as being important for a player experience until my classes on game design in university. So I need to download documents from you, apparently. So I need to get closer for this. Can I do it from this top level still, I wonder? Please? Yes, I can! Oh, we got some robots, though. I'm bad at this game. Holy crap. Oh, no, I'm going to die.
Looks like this premium plan offers targeted hits on client.
Looks like this premium plan offers classic NES and SNES games. Along with cloud save. Looks like this premium plan allows you to store more than 30 Pokemon. I've had a lot of people comment on my freaking how Pokemon lost its magic video essay. Comment about like the part where I talk about Pokemon Home. And talk about like it being a freaking paid service and whatnot. Where a lot of people have quote unquote corrected me and say like, Pokemon Home isn't a paid service, it's free, you dumb F. Where it's free to transfer between your own freaking files on the Switch for 30 Pokemon for a single box. But if you want the full 100 boxes and you want to transfer Pokemon from other games over, from older games over, you need to pay for it, is the thing. And if you're somebody who's caught them all like me, not every Pokemon being in Sword and Shield means that there's going to easily be over 30 Pokemon that in your boxes that are not able to transfer to Sword and Shield. So if you want to keep on having access to them, you better freaking continue paying there. Anyway, there's that freaking gripe that I've had with people quote unquote correcting me in that. How did we get to this topic? What the hell? Anyway, sometimes these things happen. But yeah, I think performance and how well the game can run and graphics are equally as important. I'd say performance is more important than graphics. If your game is a laggy mess, but it's the most beautiful thing ever, then there's literally no reason to play it, though. Like, if it's gonna be like a choppy mess that literally can't be run, is the thing. Like, it depends on what you define as, like, good enough performance. But, you know, if it's something like it's playing at, like, 5 FPS, but it's the most gorgeous thing you've ever seen, it's like, I'm still not gonna want to play it. Look at these reflections! They're so cool! I'm enamored. Can I get over there in time? Not quite. Well, guess we're duking it out. I changed my mind. I'm not duking it out. I can do that. I forgot. Just have one issue with the game. One key issue. I have a lot of issues I can have with games. Is it performance by chance? Wait, reach Cruciform Hospital to warn the... Wait, I came in... I reached a checkpoint without even realizing it. I didn't even need to come in here again. What the hell? I reached a checkpoint that made the next part of the mission be reach the Cruciform Hospital to warn the NHS team. Without even realizing it. I just went back in there for no reason because I've been so occupied with freaking rambling and whatnot. Yeah, a gift can only be so pretty. This is true. My goodness, just goes to show how much I'm rambling today. About things and stuff and whatnot, but it feels like a good day to ramble. Yeah, it feels like a good rambling day and whatnot. I figured it wouldn't have reached a checkpoint because we didn't even finish that conversation. Like, I died when Aiden was having the conversation with the Dudo, so we didn't even hear to go to the NHS hospital, to the hospital to warn the NHS team. Not like I would have paid attention during that cutscene with how occupied I've been rambling. Maybe I should pay a bit more attention to the cutscenes, but these are topics that are, you know, worth rambling about and whatnot. So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, definitely gonna do a video essay at some point on, you know, how we can interpret the historical accuracy of video games and how they can be interpreted from an academic standpoint. And at some point, I may well do one on the importance of graphics and art style in games. This is my stop.
According to the news, the meeting hasn't started yet. Have a look around. See if you can find them.
Okay, well, I haven't really been paying attention to like the story of what we're doing. I'm just like going around, you know, doing stuff.
I think I found them.
Well, we found them.
I'm too late, Claire. Rempart's people were already here. Dr. Ibrahim is dead.
Ibrahim, now that's a name and a
What
half.
about the rest of the team?
Not sure.
Investigate the area
Have a
for
look
clues.
around.
Huh? Investigate the area for clues? Somewhere within this yellow circle, it's telling me.
What is this?
Okay, yeah, I was just like, that's the only place it could be, right? Like the only place it could be. Dr. Ibrahim recording.
I'm Dr. Ibrahim. My team and I have been approached by Clan Kel. Wait! Hey! Let go of me! Help!
Leave on a man. She won't make it.
Part of me finds it semi-wacky at the same time.
To the market.
Oh my goodness, we're hearing that same voice again
Bastards.
that we've heard so many times.
The Kellys to do their dirty work.
That I've also heard multiple times earlier this session without calling it out, but like, don't lock me in
Wasn't
here.
planning on it. Any idea where this market might be?
Only one place it could be.
I'll talk about
Leather
tailgating.
Lane. The Kellys always hang out around there.
Out.
Doing and selling God knows what.
All right,
Well,
drop me a pin for their
I should have a
location.
podcast. I
I'll
started a
check it out.
podcast playlist on my channel. There is technically, like, if you go to my freaking... Is music playing? I don't want to play copyright music because that's probably what that is. I technically, on my YouTube homepage, if you just scroll down a bit, there is like a podcast playlist, but it's not like actual dedicated podcasts yet. But I am thinking about doing dedicated things. Essentially, what the podcast playlist is right now is I figure if I have a long enough on-stream ramble that's, you know, a topic that's worth talking about, but I don't want to spend like weeks to months making a video essay on, then I'll just put that like on-stream ramble into that playlist under podcasts. Like something for people to listen to without really paying attention to any of the gameplay that I'm doing. Or if there is like a video essay script that I put together, but it's not a topic that I feel like is worth editing, taking the time to make a whole dedicated video essay. So I just like read out my script to like some generic gameplay footage in the background. And, you know, have that be essentially a podcast. Essentially. Like the first one that's in that playlist, or the first one that I put in that playlist after I made it, I put in some like I've started putting my Nintendo Direct reactions in there, and there have been some ones in the past that I wound up putting into that playlist in earlier. But the first video that I put into that playlist when I first made it was a session on stream where I was playing Dead by Daylight, and then I switched to just chatting, and I just talked for like an hour or two about how to grow a Twitch stream / YouTube channel, essentially. And that became like my first one there. Is what that was. Literally just me rambling for 2 hours on stream about how to grow content. Is what that was. So, I mean, it's always possible to put like today's on-stream rambles into that playlist, but since there are things that I am probably going to make dedicated video essays on, I probably won't. But yeah, so I'm thinking that that playlist could mostly be like on-stream rambles or, you know, actual scripts for things that I make. But I feel like aren't topics that are worth spending weeks to months editing stuff on.
How do they look?
Alive.
Hi, how you doing? Remember that, Mortis? That whole session there? Smackaroo? There is a sort of real podcast in there, but it's not on my channel. It's in that playlist. But it's part of X-Ray Blacksmith's channel, because when I recorded a Creators Collide episode with this streamer X-Ray Blacksmith, that episode isn't up yet, but it will be before the end of the month? I'm not sure when it's going up. It'll go up at some point. But he did an episode of Creators Collide with me, and I did a thingamabob on his podcast that he's been doing called Bud to Bud. So, technically, if you go to, like, my podcast playlist on my channel, there is, like, a real podcast on there. It's just from X-Ray's channel rather than mine, and I slapped it into that same podcast because, you know, it was a podcast I was on, so it may as well go on my freaking podcast playlist, you know?
Keep your head down and run.
So it may
You'll
as
have to
well.
run for it. Don't look back.
So yeah, podcasts technically exist on the channel. Technically speaking, but it's complicated. But is complicated. I have a podcast playlist, but I don't have like a podcast, if that makes sense. If that makes sense. That's basically the situation going on with that. Upgrade acquired gun jam. Sweet! You love to see it.